Coming up on Primetime News, North Korea has reportedly intensified firing drills near the border. The South Korean military says it will take stern countermeasures in the event of any provocations. South Korea's opposition party unveils more evidence the nation's spy agency hacked personal computers. And Chinese stock market volatility takes a toll on Korean shares as the benchmark KOSPI closes below the 1,950 mark for the first time in 6 months. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Wednesday, August 19th. I'm Hwang Ji-hye.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us. Well, South Korea's military has reportedly detected unusual artillery movements on the inter-Korean border, leading to concerns that they are being ready to fire at the South's loudspeakers.
While experts say further military provocation is unlikely when Seoul and Washington are holding their joint military exercises, the South Korean military is closely monitoring the situation. Our Kim Hyun-bin starts us off.
Seoul's defense ministry said Wednesday that it spotted extra activity at the North's heavy artillery units on the border, near the location of South Korea's loudspeakers. Some experts say the communist regime is preparing to fire at the speakers. The ministry says it's keeping a close eye on the recent artillery movements to determine if the recent exercises are aimed at targeting the speakers. Psychological warfare is being conducted on both sides of the border, using loudspeakers to broadcast propaganda. Pyongyang's mine detonation on the southern side of the military demarcation line that severely injured 2 South Korean soldiers earlier this month resulted in the South resuming after 11 years its use of loudspeakers to broadcast propaganda over the border. North Korea has demanded that the South tear down its loudspeakers or risk indiscriminate attacks as a consequence. Both the U.S. State Department and the Pentagon on Tuesday local time slammed North Korea for the explosions, calling the incident a violation of the armistice agreement. The U.S. says it's keeping a close eye on any sort of unusual movements and warned North Korea that any further provocations will further it from the international community. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And this time, South Korea flexed its verbal muscle against the North.
Improper and overstretched, the words used to label the communist state's recent claims to halt Seoul-Washington joint military drills for resuming separated family reunions.
And to help us read between the lines, here's our Hwang Ji-hye.
South Korea slammed North Korea on Wednesday for linking the reunions for war-separated families and the ongoing military drills between Seoul and Washington.
The military exercises are defensive, annual and regular. The issue of family reunions is a humanitarian matter that must be resolved immediately. It is improper and overstretched to link the two issues.
In her Liberation Day speech, President Park Geun-hye said South Korea will send the North a list of about 60,000 families waiting to reunite with their relatives in North Korea. Millions of family members were separated from their loved ones during the Korean War in the 1950s.
이산가족 문제만큼은 아무리 정세가 어렵고 이념이 대립한다고 해도 인도적 견지에서 남북이 근본적인 해결 방안을 찾아야 합니다.
But in its state-run 노동신문 newspaper on Wednesday, North Korea criticized President Park for contradicting herself by mentioning the reunions when she laid the toll bar on inter-Korean cooperation. Just a day earlier, Pyongyang claimed the separated families will naturally meet once the joint military drills are suspended. The annual Ulji Freedom Guardian exercises between Seoul and Washington that began this week will run through August 28th. While South Korea previously planned to hold the reunions in time for the Korean Chuseok holiday next month, the Unification Ministry said there is no set timeline since resuming the event is of the utmost importance. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
North Korea blurts out its usual rhetoric before and during joint military drills between Seoul and Washington.
Oh, that's nothing new, but the regime crossed the line by maiming 2 South Korean soldiers.
And Seoul responded with a renewed aggressive stance against the communist state, and the eye for an eye attitude is quite visible on both sides.
Well, in the studio today to share us his insights into the escalating inter-Korean tensions is Dr. Park Hee-rak, Professor of Politics and Leadership at Kookmin University. Thank you so much for making time for us today.
Yes, my pleasure.
Well, first of all, what is your take on South Korea's very aggressive stance towards North Korea's provocations, rapid response, eye for an eye against the latest mine incidents?
I think that many South Korean people feel satisfied with this quick and resolute response, but I think it may be very dangerous because it could escalate the situation into the uncontrollable level. I think that North Korea and South Korea may be crossing the river of no return. I think that the concept of crisis management is not to escalate the situation, but to de-escalate the situation into the kind of modest level by using some kind of resolute response and by negotiation. Because South Korea is a very prosperous country and we have many things to lose. So I think that we should try to restrain ourselves from kind of provoking North Korea.
And now the two Koreas are giving back and forth a psychological war. They're resuming propaganda broadcasts. How does that change the psychological battleground between the two Koreas?
Yes, when it comes to these speakers, in other words, as you say, psychological warfare or broadcast along the DMZ. So if we think that we are engaging in psychological warfare and winning psychological warfare is necessary, I don't think it is a good concept. The competition or the winning the competition is not important. The important thing is, first, we need to continue this kind of broadcast if we resumed. If we send good messages to North Korean people, it can change their minds and probably change their politics or their regime. So in order to continue this broadcast, I think that we need to kind of control the levels of message. Instead of criticizing leadership of North Korea, we could send good information such as weather report or the kind of tips for health to North Korean people and soldiers.
Shifting gears a little bit, how dangerous and real are the nuclear threats of North Korea, especially considering how inter-Korean tensions have escalated as of recent?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We need to keep in mind that North Korea has, as you know, developed more than 10 nuclear weapons, and they succeeded to make it small and light enough to be delivered by ballistic missiles. And if North Korean leaders feel that they are very desperate and they don't have any other means to respond, they would resort to the threat of the use of nuclear weapons. We need to keep in mind all the time that if we do not wise enough to manage this crisis well, the unthinkable may happen. And we always think about how to control the pace of the escalation of the situation.
Right, the most dangerous animals are the ones that's cornered and it has its back against the wall against the rest of the world. So we need to be very careful when approaching North Korea, not just for show for the rest of the world about where we stand right now. Thank you so much for your insights, Professor Park Hee-rak. We hope to have you back here again as soon as possible next time.
Yes, you're welcome.
Korean ambassador to Japan Yoo Hoong-soo says the leaders of Korea and Japan should meet for talks regardless of public sentiment. Yoo told reporters in Tokyo on Wednesday the summit must take place since Koreans' sentiment about Japan will improve once the leaders are seen together in an agreeable mood. President Park Geun-hye and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe have not yet held a summit as relations remain at an historical low over Abe's position on Japan's colonial past. Referring to recent cooperation between the two neighbors in areas such as security and the economy, Yoo expressed hopes the momentum will lead to a meeting between the two leaders this year. Shifting gears, Korea's main opposition party has disclosed the results of its probe into allegations surrounding the nation's spy agency that it hacked into personal computers of ordinary citizens. Our Kim Young-gil has more.
Lawmaker An Chol-soo of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, who headed the so-called Citizens Information Protection Committee, announced the results of their probe of the National Intelligence Service on Wednesday.
All the domestic IPs which the National Intelligence Service tried to install hacking programs on between 2012 and 2013 targeted personal computers, including 3 KT IPs that we found this time.
The committee's head An urged the NIS to confess how many domestic personal computers the spy agency had tried to install hacking programs on over the past few years. He said the team uncovered the evidence after analyzing some 400 gigabytes of data released from the Italian surveillance malware vendor hacking team. The leak resulted in allegations that the NIS wiretapped South Korean citizens while the spy agency maintains it was used to counter North Korea's cyber terrorism. And the lawmaker and founder of South Korea's largest antivirus software firm, Anlab, also called for a separate investigation by the prosecution.
If the prosecution has the will to proceed with a probe, then it must raid the NIS now to secure the necessary documents and data files. I just cannot understand why the prosecution is not launching a separate investigation into the NIS scandal.
The ruling Saenuri Party has asked for the NPD's support in bringing an end to the scandal by suggesting new measures be devised, such as reforming the spy agency at the Parliamentary Intelligence Committee level. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
The underwater inspection to salvage the sunken Seoul ferry officially began earlier today. According to the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries on Wednesday, divers from Shanghai Salvage, the state-run Chinese consortium that was hired for the job, began their operation at around 2 p.m. in Jindo, Jeollanam-do province. The inspection comes exactly 490 days after the tragic sinking of the ferry, which claimed more than 300 lives, most of them high school students. The government plans to raise the sunken ferry by next July, but the operations may take longer than scheduled as the project will be halted from November to March due to the cold weather.
Korean stock prices fell over fears of a possible U.S. rate hike this fall and the devalued Chinese yuan. Experts say volatility will continue for the time being. For the numbers and more, we turn to our Connie Kim.
Korea's benchmark KOSPI dropped 0.86% on Wednesday to close at 1,939.38. It's the first time in 6 months the index fell below the 1,950 mark. The secondary stock trading board KOSDAQ dropped more than 4%, closing at 670.55. The sharp decline comes as investment sentiment was dampened due to uncertainties over a possible rate hike in the U.S. and the slowing Chinese economy that prompted the government to devalue its currency. Experts forecast volatility will rattle the stock market for the time being, especially with the recent devaluation of the Chinese yuan.
With the Chinese economy losing steam, the premium for Chinese stocks is low and a vicious cycle created by an investor sell-off is continuing. It's important for the Chinese economy to recover trust.
Volatile trading sessions continued in China and spread to other Asian markets on Wednesday. The benchmark Shanghai Composite Index closed up 1.2% after it slipped more than 5% in the morning session. This follows a drop of more than 6% the previous day. Japan's Nikkei dropped more than 1.5%, and Taiwan's TAIEX plunged nearly 2% on Wednesday. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Korea's economy experienced sluggish growth in the second quarter, and while that was no big surprise, there's extra concern as Korea's growth was weaker than many other countries in the world, including those in the grip of a financial crisis. Kwon So-hwa fills us in.
Slow growth is not an issue unique to Korea, as the world economy, be it developing or developed countries, are not in a particularly good phase. However, in comparison to other countries, the situation in Korea may be more serious. According to figures released by Bloomberg, Korea's gross domestic product expanded 0.3% in the second quarter of the year from the previous quarter. That's not only much lower than other major Asian countries like Indonesia and China, but even crisis-hit Greece is recovering, with Portugal also experiencing more growth than Korea. Among Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Greece, and Spain, or PIGS, the group of Eurozone countries that were affected economically by the 2008 financial crisis, only Italy showed weaker results.
The fact that Korea has posted weaker growth than South European countries going through financial crises means the problem is serious. Considering that piling stocks are accounting for 0.2 percentage points, the actual growth was at 0 to 0.1%.
Korea's GDP growth is now at the same level it was in the fourth quarter last year, and minus those 2 quarters, it's at its lowest in 6 years. For the time being, things are not expected to improve much, with experts saying Korea's economy will slow down alongside China. That's why financial institutions are downgrading Korea's forecast. In a report by Moody's analyzing the impact of China and Greece on the world economy, Korea's economic growth outlook was lowered for this year by 0.1 percentage point from a month ago to 2.5%. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Korea's producer prices have been declining every month for exactly 1 year. In July, the index that measures the price was down 4% on year due to low global oil prices. For this story, we have our Shin Se-min.
Korea's producer prices have dropped to their lowest in almost 5 years, declining at the fastest pace since April of 1999. The Bank of Korea said Wednesday that its producer price index, a barometer to gauge future consumer inflation, came in at 101.43, down 4% from the previous year, extending its downward streak that began in August last year. The central bank attributed the ongoing slide to falling global oil prices. Utility prices moved down, with electricity, fuel, and gas costs dropping a combined 10.3%. Petroleum and coal prices posted the biggest decrease, coming in 31% lower compared to July of last year. The fall in producer prices, dragged down by continually low global oil prices, could mean that it will eventually help stabilize consumer prices and spur purchasing power down the line. But it's not all good news.
Producer prices, largely determined by the price of raw materials, could impact exporting companies as they lose in price competitiveness in the global market.
Experts add there is only one way to cope with the global oil glut, which is expected to drag on and keep prices low, improve the quality of products in stiff competition with other countries. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Lotte Group is preparing to release initial public offerings for most of its affiliates and its hotel operator, Lotte Hotel, as part of efforts to make the governing of the company more transparent. For more on this positive baby steps, we have our Kim Ji-yeon.
Korean retail giant Lotte Group is pushing for the listing of its affiliates to help simplify its corporate governance structure as part of a reform plan proposed by Chairman Shin Dong-bin. Initial public offering is expected to be released for affiliates with assets between $253 million and $422.4 million US. More than 90% of all Lotte's non-listed affiliates fall within that range. This includes the group's convenience store chain 7-Eleven and fast food chain Lotteria. The group's also expected to set a mandate to hire outside directors to root out arbitrary business management when releasing the IPOs. Lotte will send out proposals to around 10 local and overseas brokerages, and candidates will be confirmed by August 31st. The final list is expected to be revealed in early September. Lotte, the country's fifth largest conglomerate, is expected to form a task force comprised of independent parties to carry out the plans. The move comes amid the group's push for the listing of its hotel operator, Lotte Hotel. Chairman Shin vowed to relieve the group's web of 416 cross-shareholdings by nearly 80% by the end of the year, after Lotte came under fire for two of the founder's sons fighting over who takes over the group. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And for the top international headlines, we now turn to our Lee Sun-ho at the News Center.
Today's focus, Bangkok authorities continue their search for the suspect of the recent bombing in the city. Germany's parliament passes a third bailout package, and the White House hires its first transgender employee.
Well, Sun-ho, how much do we know about the identity of the Bangkok bombing attack suspect?
Well, police revealed a sketch of the blast suspect, but it's still unclear if the man was Thai or a different nationality. They also haven't found his whereabouts. However, a taxi driver has just come forward saying that he may have seen the man. Now, the drawings show that the person is to be fair-skinned with thick black hair, a wispy beard, and having black glasses on. Police say the sketch could help locate the yellow-shirted man caught in the CCTV footage moments before the explosion. A $28,000 reward has been offered to anyone who can provide information leading to his arrest. But that's not all, as authorities added that the perpetrator may have been part of a network with Thai nationals involved.
There are many possibilities. I believe it's unlikely that this attack would be carried out by one person. It is likely that many people are involved and have some sort of backing.
On Wednesday morning, the shrine where the blast took place reopened to the public. People arrived to place flowers and candles, while others posted messages of condolences.
I came here to mourn the victims, and I hope they will rest in peace in heaven.
In the meantime, Thai police are transferring the victims' bodies back to their home countries. The attack on Monday killed 20 people and wounded more than 120. Furthermore, on Tuesday evening, in a separate incident, an explosive device was thrown from a Bangkok pier with no injuries. And turning to Europe, the German parliament overwhelmingly passed a third crucial bailout deal for Greece worth around $95 billion. After 2 hours of debate, lawmakers in the lower house voted 454 to 113 for the rescue plan, with 18 abstaining. They had to interrupt their holidays again this summer to discuss the rescue package. Now, during the session, the German finance minister urged the parliament to give Greece a new start.
In view of the fact that the Greek parliament has already passed a large part of the measures, it would be irresponsible not to use the opportunity for a new start in Greece.
Now, there was considerable resistance within German Chancellor Angela Merkel's own conservative lawmakers, but with support from other parties, including the Social Democrats and the opposition Greens, the parliament ensured the approval of the bailout. Greece is now moving closer to paying back its debt of $3.5 billion to the European Central Bank. And lastly, the White House hired its first openly transgender official, expanding U.S. President Barack Obama's support for lesbian, gay, bisexuals, and transgender rights. Rafi Friedman Gerspan will serve as Outreach and Recruitment Director in the White House Office of Presidential Personnel. She previously worked as a policy advisor for the National Center for Transgender Equality. Now, Obama was initially opposed to gay marriage, but came to support it in 2012. Last year, he signed executive orders that banned federal contractors from discriminating in employment based on sexual orientation and gender identity. The Department of Defense is currently reviewing a policy that restricts transgender men and women working in the military. And that wraps up your international news for this hour. I'll see you again tomorrow.
It was hot today here in Seoul under cloudy skies, and even right now, lots of clouds are hovering over the peninsula. In fact, some regions received sporadic showers in the afternoon with chances of more instances of sudden rain to come until way past midnight, along with thunder and lightning. And Jeju Island is among the regions with rain in the forecast with 10 to 40 millimeters of precipitation expected until tomorrow. And Jeollado and Gyeongsangdo provinces shall see 5 to 20 millimeters, and upper regions, including here in the capital, will see very spotty rain, while the rest will have cloudy Thursday. And temperature-wise, the mercury will rise to similar numbers as today, and daily high here in Seoul will be reaching up to 30 degrees Celsius, while Daegu, Gwangju, and Busan will all peak at 27 tomorrow afternoon. And as for the other parts, Daejeon and Jeju Island should see a high of 28, while Dokdo rises to 26. Now, nationwide rain is in store on Friday, with high in Seoul expected to stay in the upper 20s. But after the rain, temperatures will rise again over the weekend under mostly sunny skies. But that's all for the weather. Good night.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for staying with us.
We'll be back tomorrow, same time. Goodbye for now.